Houston, we see you on a stereo.
Conspiracy, lies, truth, helping you understand the lies of the world and see the truth of the Bible. Welcome to Celebrate Truth with your hosts, Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate.
Hey, it's Nate Wolf with Celebrate Truth Radio, and we are live tonight in the 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight slot here on Revolution Radio, Studio A. And Robbie will be along with me shortly. He is celebrating his father's 75th, and they were literally just starting to sing happy birthday a few moments ago. So he'll be jumping in with us here shortly, but I am really pleased to introduce our special guest tonight, one of my new friends and brothers, Rob SKIBA. Rob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very excited to have you on. I know you've been extremely busy with a lot of important projects and, just labors of love with seed and all these wonderful things that you've been involved in. So to start out, why don't you just share a little bit with us about you for the listening audience? I'm sure many of those listening know who you are, but also there's, of course, many on the network who may not have heard of your work before. So just give us a little bit of background and what you're doing and what you've been involved in these last few years as you've gone down the rabbit hole.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a Christian family. I was saved at age 7. My dad was a Baptist minister as a kid. And when I was a kid, and I've been in some form of ministry pretty much my entire life, starting with Vacation Bible School in my parents' front yard.
Nice.
Later going into teaching Sunday school, and then when I joined the military after I left right after high school, I graduated in '87, and like a week or two later, I was in boot camp, an Army boot camp, and continued ministry there with a friend of mine. We started a group we called the God Squad.
Nice.
When we were in high school. We went to a public high school together.
Yeah.
And so there were several of us, and we would meet together. There was a stairwell next to the library, and we would meet under the stairwell in the morning for prayer. And the school actually opened up, believe it or not, a secular public school opened up one of their classrooms to us on Tuesday afternoons after school.
Really?
And we held Bible studies there. My best friend growing up, his dad was our youth pastor at the church we went to. And so we would have Bible studies in our secular school on Tuesdays. Anybody wanted to go. And I used to use the Chick Tracts. Do you remember those Chick Tracts?
Oh, yeah.
Those
Definitely.
little comic books.
Yeah.
Those were great. I don't remember how many there were, but I had a huge stack of them. I think I had all of them at the time.
Yes.
And so, those were the seeds I was using at that time. That people always go, "Hey, Rob, you got any more of those little comic books?" Yeah. So, and then they'd want to talk about them, because those Chick Tracts, they were pretty hardcore. Especially the favorite one everybody loved was the one was titled "Hi There" and had the Reaper on the front. Sure, the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
And it's about a construction worker who dies, and anyway, the journey that he goes on, to judgment.
Yes.
So, we had the God Squad in high school, and several of us joined the Army together, so we continued that in the Army, and I was in the Army until 93, got out, and 94 started traveling around with an acting troupe doing Alvin and the Chipmunks touring the country. And
awesome.
And it was on one of the legs of the tour that the tour manager, he was a guy, his stage name was Ox. He was a big guy.
Wow.
We were just chilling out one day, and I told him, I said, I have this vision I want to do a passion play.
Yeah.
But I want to do it like really hardcore, like basically what Mel Gibson did in, 2004? So about 10 years later. So it's 1994.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, man, I said, I want to do it from a different perspective than we're used to. We all know the passion story, but, I'm thinking about writing the story from the perspective of the centurion that pierced Christ's side.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, oh, you know who the centurion was, don't you? And I says, well, the Bible doesn't name him. It just says a centurion. He goes, well, no, the Bible doesn't, but extra biblical books do. And the book of Nicodemus names him Cassius Rufio Longinus. Mm-hmm. And he was like a big guy into the lore of the Spear of Destiny and all that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, this is fascinating. So he sent me on quite a journey of research, and that was really the beginning of my researching days. Was researching this guy in the Spear of Destiny and all that. And so I produced a passion play. I played Jesus and in 1994, and it was very bloody. I spent a lot of time in fake blood and latex makeup and and it was pretty darn close to what they showed with Jim Caviezel in The Passion, and this is 1994. Wow. And so, like, my dream, because we saw some like 12 people come to Christ as a result of that Passion play in our little Baptist church, and I thought, this has to go on the big screen. So that was like my life ambition from like that moment on was I want to make what eventually Mel Gibson did make. And in 2004, when he made it, I felt gypped. I felt like I was robbed of my life dream. I was mad at God. I was mad at Mel. I was mad at everybody. I was like, man, this is all I've ever. It's like I worked my whole life for this, and so when I first saw the movie, I spent most of it mad, and like everybody I know that went and saw it was profoundly impacted by it. Yeah. So I thought, okay, now I got to get my ego out of the way. I'm going to go watch this again, And so it was the second time I saw it that it had the real impact on me that it had on most people the first time around. And, I had laid my dream down because the dream of filmmaking and everything, it cost me my first marriage. It led me to bankruptcy. I ended up broke, homeless, divorced, bankrupt, and living in a Dodge Stratus with everything I owned in it, ready to put a bullet in my head in 2003. Wow. And so, and the divorce was a very painful ordeal, and I couldn't stand living in Massachusetts anymore. My uncle lived in Texas, so he sponsored me to a scripture-based self-help program here in Texas. It was a 3-weekend deal. He flew me down for the first 2, and the third one, I'm like, you know what? I can't stand living here in Massachusetts. I mean, she left me for another guy, and her boyfriend bought her or got her a business office space right across from my parents' house. So when I lost my house, I had to move with my parents, and it was like every day I had to wake up and there's, I'm doing ASAP, how long do the wicked prosper, Lord, that kind of deal. And like, I mean, I couldn't even find peace at my parents' house because that was there all the time. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drive down to this Road Adventure was the name of the program. I'm going to go down to this program, go to part 3, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm already living in my car. So, I was living at my parents' house, but I needed to get out. And so I came down to Texas, attended part 3 with ambitions to go to Hollywood, go make movies. And Father had other plans, wouldn't let me leave. I fought with him for most of 2003. And then by August, I laid it down. I said, you know what, Father, if I never make anything, I don't care. I want what you want. And I pretty much the entire year, 2003, praying a lot, crying a lot, and reading my Bible. And that's about it for pretty much the entire year. And went through an amazing spiritual awakening and a renewed relationship with Father, unlike anything I've ever had before. Yeah. And in January of 2004, he gave me the dream back, but in a different way. He made me a multimedia missionary, and I got involved with the International Missions Organization and was blessed to travel to about 12 countries in a little over 6 years. Awesome. And it was incredible, dude. I mean, I would get entrenched with the missionaries, so I would do what they did, so I got to participate, but I would also document it on video, and then I'd come back to Texas and create little videos that the missionaries could then use to play at churches and whatnot to help create awareness for what they're doing and raise support. And I loved it, man. That was the greatest job ever. And I could have done that. I could have done that for the rest of my life. Sweet, but in 2009, I felt like the Holy Spirit said, "Hey, that dream you laid down in 2003, you want it back?" I said, "Nope." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, it hurt too much, Lord. I mean, that was a painful season." Yeah. Well, that's because you did it your way. What if we did it my way? And I knew what he meant by that because in the corporate world, not only did I do traveling with acting troops and stuff in the 90s, I also got involved with doing corporate video and did that about from 94 to 2004. And in the corporate world, it was like, we had huge clients. I mean, Dunkin' Donuts, American Express, Lego, big clients. Wow. They'd say, "Hey, we need a video." And okay, great. We would script it. We would storyboard it. We'd shoot with intent, have it edited a couple of days, and, client's happy and it's all done. In missionary world, it was like, "Hey, Rob, we need a video for Albania." Cool. What's it about? I don't know. Get on a plane. So
wow, big difference, right?
Huge. And in every one of those trips, it was like I had no idea what I was going to do. So my prayer over there was, first of all, for protection, because the ministry specialized in restricted access countries. And these were places where less than 2% of the population identified as Christian, and consequently they were typically atheists, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim countries.
Wow.
Typically places that are pretty hostile to the gospel. And so most of the time I was working with underground church movement. And so, of course, I'm praying for safety.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also, Father just showed me the story, and I'm like, you're the executive producer, writer, director. I'm your camera guy. Just tell me what to do, boss. It's kind of the prayer, and he did. I mean, it was like every day my prayer was very intentional. Father, I welcome you into my day. Use me. Use my hands, my feet, my eyes. Point me in the right direction, and he would do incredible. It would take all night to tell the story, so I'll spare you. But just incredible, amazing things. And so in 2009, when he said, "What if we did it my way?" I knew what he was talking about.
Yes.
And I think, a lot of us Christians, we want to do something for God. We have whatever gift, talent, and ability we have. And we say, Father, I want to make music for you. I want to make movies for you. I want to write books for you, whatever.
Yeah.
But, and that's noble. It sounds good. But what I had to learn myself was, and his communication to me was, yeah, that's cool, Rob, but, I'd really rather do something through you. So
big difference. Yeah,
there's a huge difference between I'm going to do this for you and no, I'm going to let him do this through me, and in opening yourself up to whatever that mission is.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
It was not long after that. That was actually it was because of that I went to the desert of Arizona through a series of circumstances. I saw on Google Earth some things. I was looking for some locations that would look like Iraq, because the story that I had in my mind dealt with special forces troops working and doing some covert stuff in Iraq.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find a place in Texas so I didn't have to go to Iraq that would look like, for location scouting. So
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I'm looking on Google Earth. I found some cool places out in El Paso area that look very comparable, at least from a Google Earth perspective, to what I saw in the Middle East. And then I just kept looking. I kept going further and further west. And eventually I found myself 2 hours north of Tucson in the desert area there. And I found what looked like a black hole in the desert. And I was like, what is this? I mean, it's a very bizarre looking thing. I was like, man. So I'm like, so when I zoomed out and saw where I was, I'm like, oh, okay. So what if my character, he ends up there, but he needs to get back to Dallas. So how does he get from there to Dallas? And then I saw, Tombstone, Arizona wasn't too far away. I'm like, what? Yeah. So I'm writing all this stuff, and I wrote, his dad lives in Tombstone, so he goes to see his dad, and so I'm writing all this stuff. The next day I go to a party, and there's other Christian writers there, and this guy, just out of the blue, he says, one of my favorite movies of all time is Tombstone. I'm like, dude, I just wrote in my script last night that my character goes to Tombstone. He's like, yeah, no way. So then I go to work the next day, and Delta Airlines sends me an email saying, hey, you've got a lot of Sky Miles from all your missionary trips, yeah, I
bet.
I had a lot of Sky Miles, and they said, hey, you better use them before the end of 2009 or you're going to lose them. And so I called Sheila. I said, hey, and by the way, I met Sheila at the ministry. I got hired in January of 2004, and she got hired in August of 2004.
Oh, wow.
So that was a divine connection. We got married.
There you go. Providence.
Yeah, July 7, 2007. So he not only gave me the dream back in a different way, but it was a Job scenario where I had lost everything and then got it all back, kind of thing. So, by this time we're married 2 years, and I said, hey, I think Delta wants to pay for me to go to Arizona. She's like, yeah, go for it. So I spent 5 days alone out in the desert of Arizona with God. Wow. That was a very Abraham Moses type of an experience, and lots of crazy revelation and very serendipitous, interesting moments that, again, it would take all night to describe it. But long story short, he downloaded into my head, and the only way I could describe it's like a Matrix type of thing with a USB cable in the back of my head, where I was sitting on top of a mountain there in the desert, and I felt like he literally downloaded 72 episodes of a TV series, which became known as now Seed.
Yes.
And so I started, my creative writing pace is typically 3 to 5 pages, maybe a little more, a day, when I'm just making stuff up out of my head. Well, I came back from that trip and wrote 17 pages in a half a day and outlined 72 episodes for the whole TV series, 6 seasons, 12 episodes per season.
Wow.
But as I started going through and writing the scripts for it and looking at the outline, I thought, shoot, I'm not going to write all 72 episodes. I'm going to need other writers. Well, how do I help the other writers to get into my head to know where I'm going with this?
Absolutely.
So that's when I started blogging and writing stuff and doing videos, which eventually made it to YouTube. And a guy I posted, Randy Domain had posted something on the Nephilim in one of the forums on Facebook. And so I was following the conversation, interacting a little bit. And I just produced a video where I was giving a lecture talking about what I believe happened at Mount Hermon when Yeshua took his disciples there and said, hey, who do men say that I am? So I posted this video. Well, this guy named Doug Riggs saw the video, loved it, and he forwarded it to like Tom Horn, Steve Quell, Eli Marzulli, all the people that I had been researching. Like I've been reading, I've got like all their books and DVDs, right? And so this guy, he sent my stuff out to them, and the next thing you know, Tom Horn calls me.
Wow.
And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I was like getting a call from like Tom Clancy or something, It felt like,
Awesome. Yeah.
And, got to know him fairly well. And he invited me to speak at the first Future Congress conference in Branson, Missouri. And that was a huge conference. And this is like my first time out,
Yeah.
And they gave me 3 hour-and-a-half speaking sessions.
Really? Wow. That's huge.
It was huge. Well, the co-founder of the Future Congress was a guy named David Hitt, who is a physicist that lived here in the Dallas area. So Tom introduced me to David, and David and I went out to eat for lunch one day to get to know each other and had an amazing 3 or 4 hour conversation. It was just mind blowing. And so, as a result of that, he's like, dude, why don't you speak at my conference? I'm like, okay.
Wow.
And so that basically launched my new life that I'm living now, where I started writing blogs, producing videos that led to doing conferences and speaking literally all over the world. One of my first conferences, I don't even remember. I don't know if Future Congress was my first or second, but very early on, it was my second conference. My Future Congress was my first, but the second invite I got was I had just published my first book, Babylon Rising. And this guy in Pretoria, South Africa, sends me an email, says, hey, would you be willing to do a conference in South Africa? I'm like, yeah, sure. Who's going to be there? He said, no, just you. I'm like, what? So I called Sheila and I said, check this out. This dude in South Africa wants me to do a conference. And she's like, well, we go as a package deal.
Nice.
Yeah, of course. So I wrote back to him. I said, well, my only requirement is that you fly my wife and I there and give us a place to stay. And yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we got Delta Airline tickets for like a 10-day trip to South Africa. So we go there and we're literally treated like royalty. I mean, we're in a high-end gated community. We had a guest house there with a maid service and everything.
Sweet.
And you look out the window and there's like a savannah and lions and stuff. You're like, what? Like, how did this happen, right?
Wow.
Kind of a cool story on that too, though. Back in '99, after I did the Passion Play in '94, I started writing a screenplay, which turned into a trilogy on the Spear of Destiny and Longinus and stuff. And I had written several of the scripts, but I went out there to pitch one of them. There was a pitch fest to a bunch of studios, Hollywood studios. So I was pitching to all these studios, and one of the companies that was like a co-production company for Close Encounters of the Third Kind was interested in my script, but they wanted a rewrite. So I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. So I got home and I did the rewrite. It was literally the day I finished the rewrite that my wife's, I found out, and then my first wife, and everything blew apart. And I was like, okay, so that deal never went anywhere. But while I was in Hollywood, I was staying at a hostel for like $15 a night next to the Orange Bowl. And the owner of the hostel, this guy named Petri, he and I have long conversations every night. Like during the day, I was pitching my scripts and beating the streets trying to make things happen. And at night, I'd go back to the hostel and would be hanging out with this guy, and he was from South Africa. Well, that's like in '99. We lost contact with each other a few years later. Didn't hear anything from him. So here it is, 2012, 2011, 12. I think it was 12. And so I'm in Pretoria doing these lectures, and this guy in Cape Town found out that I was in Pretoria. You may know him, Mornay Thuenson.
Yeah.
He's on like a NIUC TV group a lot. Anyway, Mornay found out that I was in Pretoria, so he's like, is there any way you could come down here? I could get you a venue. And so I asked our host, I said, this guy in Cape Town is interested. Do you think how far is that? And like, well, yeah, it's a puddle jumper flight, but we could do it. My wife and I go down there all the time. We go there. There's the whining communities and stuff there. And so they paid for us to fly down to Cape Town. I did several more lectures there. And when I'm just about ready to speak at the first lecture I gave in Cape Town, who comes walking down the aisle but Petrie, the guy I knew in Hollywood.
Wow.
He had just he saw a flyer somewhere. He's like, I wonder if that's the same Rob SKIBA I used to talk to at the hostel. He never forgot about me.
Oh, cool.
So, so it's been an amazing journey of research and lectures, publishing books and doing DVDs and stuff. And I felt like, okay, after I had done a whole lot of that, I had a whole collection of books and DVDs out. I thought, okay, now I have my collection ready. I can start seeking writers, and I can give the writers this, say, you want to get in my head, watch these, get back to me, and let's start writing. And started working on Seed again in 2014.
Yeah.
We were doing the audio dramas for it, Rick Hummer and I and several actors that I got. And then in April of 2015, this thing called Flat Earth starts circulating the internet.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I find myself on that rabbit trail for 4 years. I'm still so far deep in that rabbit hole, I'll never get out of it. Yeah. But as of this year, I felt like, okay, all the research, including Flat Earth, that I feel like I need to do, that I believe I was commissioned by God to do what I did.
Yes.
I've been released to start working on Seed again. So that's as of this year, that's been my primary focus, where at least 90% of my time is focused on.
Now, when you came to, you kind of went down the flat Earth, biblical cosmology, whatever you want to call it. You went down that rabbit hole, and about how long was it before you were fairly convinced of it as a fact?
Great question. Well, I was convinced that the Bible says it. In uncertain terms. I was convinced of that probably within a week or two at the most.
Okay.
I heard Mark Sargent the first time on a Canary Cry radio interview that he did with them, April 13th, 2015. 2 days later, within that time period, I had contacted him, and 2 days later had him on my show.
Wow.
On TFR on April 15th.
Wow.
And I don't remember if it was on the show or afterwards, but at some point he said, okay, because I believed in the Neil Adams expanding Earth globe model. And I taught that as recently as December of 2014. So just, a few months prior. And, if you listen to that first interview, I'm talking about that. And, Mark says, okay, I get it. Prove you live on a globe without using NASA, the government, or the military.
Uh-oh.
And of course, that's a good way of challenging people, but nobody does it. Nobody listens. I didn't listen. The first thing he said, we've all seen the pictures. Well, where did the pictures come from? NASA, the government, the military. Well, the first thing you have to say to yourself, and look, I'm a patriot. I served my time in the military. I love this country, but the fact is the military takes its order from the government.
Yes.
And you could just ask anybody, what government in the world is 100% trustworthy? There's none. And America and Russia are two definitely notorious for not being trustworthy. Yeah. Among others, of course. But, of course, and NASA is part of that whole establishment as well. So, but I did start looking into those pictures, and you start seeing things like composite and CGI and artist rendering and like all these indicators that tell you this is not an actual Polaroid shot of the Earth,
Yeah.
And the one that really got me was seeing a 25-hour time lapse of the Earth shot allegedly from the Galileo space probe in 1990. And this is on JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory's website. So it's an official thing on their website showing 25-hour rotation of the Earth, time lapse, and none of the clouds are moving. I mean, it literally looks like a marble with painted clouds just kind of spinning, herky-jerky.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck, man? I mean, I could go outside with my camera, shoot the clouds for an hour, put it in Adobe Premiere and speed it up, and the clouds will be doing all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yet on that day in December of 1990, the clouds didn't do anything anywhere in the world. So I'm like, okay, something's messed up. And so what should have been the first thing that I should have done as a Bible-believing Christian would have been to consult the scriptures. It was actually more like the second or third thing I did.
Yeah.
But, after all the other research that I did, and I actually believe that I had to be prepared in advance and take the journey that I took ahead of time to go on this journey. When I did Babylon Rising, the research for that, I came to realize just about everything we've been taught is a lie.
Yeah, for sure.
so many things. And so I'd already been primed sort of with that attitude. Well, what if we've been taught wrong? I taught myself that the Bible, Isaiah 40:22, see, Earth's globe.
Yeah.
No, that's just right. So I was aware at, going into it that we all bring bias to the text, and we bring our preconceived notions to it, and we read through those lenses, whether it's preacher, rapture, dispensation theology, or, pick a doctrine, right?
Yeah.
We've been given a set of glasses, and we're reading the scriptures through those glasses. So metaphorically speaking, I took those glasses off, and I prayed intentionally. I said, Father, if I'm bringing preconceived bias to the text, please remove it from me. I want to know what your word says. Let the Holy Spirit be my teacher. Well, if you pray that prayer, and I guarantee you 98% of my detractors have never prayed that prayer.
Yeah.
If you pray that prayer and you are indeed open to allowing the Holy Spirit to just let the text say what it says, dude, you're gonna hit verse 6. Okay?
Absolutely.
Of chapter 1 of this thing we call the Bible, a specific book of Genesis, and you run into this thing, a hard structure called the firmament. Yeah. And then you read a little further on day 4, and it says that God put the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament. And, that's like, I don't know what verse that is, a little further down. At that point, I literally stepped away from the Bible, and I'm looking at it in shock. Because I Kent Hovind, God bless him. He's done an amazing work in destroying the lies in the textbooks and empowering Christians, especially young Christians like myself. He came through our little Baptist church, did his whole week-long creation versus evolution seminar, got all 12 VHS, copies of this thing. He really did a good job of giving us the ammo that we need to fight that battle. But he taught the canopy theory, which I used to believe and teach myself, that the earth was, the firmament was like an ice canopy of some sort that surrounded the earth, and they would point to Europa, one of the moons, I believe, of Jupiter. Yeah. That has that exact same structure. It has a frozen canopy of ice covering what looks like a volcanic surface of some sort. So, see, we've got an example of that in our own solar system. And so I taught it myself, that the firmament was a canopy that surrounded the earth, and that something hit it and destroyed it, and it rained down for 40 days and 40 nights, and that was part of the cause of the flood.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that is the scriptures clearly say that the sun, moon, and stars are in the firmament, not outside and around it, which that model requires. So with all due respect to Dr. Carl Baugh and Dr. Kent Hovind, sorry, you're wrong. And that was the first time I saw it. Because I used to teach it myself. I've got PowerPoint, and Sunday school material that I taught, from their materials, crafting messages on it. And
sure, they had a pretty wide influence. A lot of people were influenced with their teaching. And yeah, I mean, when you first, when the light bulb first comes on, I mean, I had a similar experience there in Genesis 1, and you're absolutely right about that prayer, because, my wife and I went to the Take on the World 18 conference, which you spoke at, and that was the first truth conference that we had gone to. We were already convinced of the true biblical creation, but we still were missing some pieces of the puzzle, actually seeing and meeting you guys, speakers, and other believers in person. And we prayed that prayer, that you described, being open and say, just, please strip any deception away, any veils from our eyes. We just want to know the truth. And we want to be able to share this truth with others. And as you know, a few weeks after that prayer, my whole world got turned upside down, got fired from the church, and the battle was on. But yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of folks had that similar belief, and it seems to me that the Spirit convicted you, and from what you could see with your own eyes, and you recognized immediately that these two things don't connect. It's like I always try to engage people in the first, chapter of Genesis. If I can't get them anywhere else in all of the scriptures that are, considered biblical cosmology scriptures, I want to try to get them to engage in chapter 1, because as you know, day 3, you've got the seas being gathered together in one place, and the dry land, the earth, appearing. And then day 4, you have the sun, moon, and stars created as lights, and for signs, seasons, days, and years. And it's just so plain when you finally see it. So what do you think, Rob, was the difference that particular day, that particular moment, when you read that and you were like, wait a second, hold the phone, this doesn't add up? Do you believe it was the answer to the prayer specifically, and just the Spirit working to help you be able to see that truth?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. Okay, after I read through to day 4, and I took a step back, and I'm literally, it was almost like I didn't even want to touch the Bible anymore. It was like it scared me. I was like, wait a second here.
What's going
on? We've got a problem. Yeah. It's kind of like, holy heresy, Batman. What do I do with this, right? And I'm sitting here in my chair in my home office right now, probably in the exact same position that I was that day, where I'm kind of leaning on the right arm of my chair, staring at my desk in front of me, my right hand on my chin, and I was like, what is happening here? So then I said, well, I'm gonna have to write it out. Like, because I'm a timeline type of person, I'm a visual person, and it's best that, when I have a thought, I've got to write it down, because there's a lot going on in my noodle sometimes, and I don't want to lose it. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna start writing a blog, and I'm going to continue with the Genesis narrative of creation. And that's just the first chapter. Really, chapter 2 just kind of elaborates. So you're like, okay, well, the first chapter of Genesis. Well, then I'm going to start looking for anything else that I could find in Scripture that relates to a description of this, first of the heavens above, and then of the earth beneath, right? And that turned into a very, very lengthy blog. I probably started reading, I first started the prayer and first started reading Genesis. I want to say it's probably, 6, 7 o'clock at night. By 3 or 4 in the morning, I'm still writing. And I'm looking, I'm looking up pillars of the earth. I'm seeing, the circle of the earth. And I start looking into Hebrew, because when I saw in the firmament, I'm like, maybe it's an English translation. Now,
yeah, sure.
I grew up King James only. I am not personally King James only, but I grew up King James only. So that's always been my preferred study Bible. That's where I have all my memory verses and whatnot. But I'm a big advocate for parallel Bibles and studying online tools where you can look at multiple translations. Sure. And when you can always have a Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek lexicon handy nearby. So my go-to places are typically BibleGateway.com for just generally looking stuff up. BibleHub.com when I want to really look at the parallels and they've got a good Hebrew, Greek, that, and sometimes Blue Letter Bible also. So I those at least 2 or 3 are always open in my browser windows.
Yeah.
So, I just started doing keyword searches and looking at it. And when I saw, all the English translations were saying in the firmament. So I'm looking at Hebrew, and the word firmament is rakia, but when you put a prefix in front of it with the letter bait, it means in. In fact, the letter bait is the first letter in our Bible in the beginning.
Yes.
Bait. So when it's used as a prefix, it serves the function of inside, So I'm going, wow. I mean, you can't really get around that. And then you look in the Septuagint and look in the Greek, and it's stereoma, and you look at the definition of that. It's a hard structure. It's a very, people want to say that there's only 8,000 words in Hebrew, and it's very ambiguous sometimes. And people come up with all kinds of interpretations based on Paleo Hebrew and letter meanings and gematria kinds of stuff. So there's all that. Well, when the Hebrew scholars took their Hebrew text and translated it into Greek, they had a much bigger library of words to choose from. So you might say there's a little bit of leeway that you could play around maybe with the Hebrew rakia. You don't have that with the Greek.
Yeah.
The Greek's like, no, this is like a hard structure, a foundation, what you build a building on. It's a solid structure. So I've got a friend of mine that grew up in Greece, speaks Greek fluently, and he's my go-to guy with anything Greek. And he never has a dog in the hunt. I never tell him. Why I'm asking the question.
Nice.
Just call him out of the blue and say, "Hey, Peter, what does stereoma mean?" And he would just tell me what it means. He heard the word, so he tells me. So I mean, he's been an invaluable resource for me in that regard. And so I start getting him to look at it, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, you cannot make this expanse like Danny Faulkner and so many others want. It's the open expanse of space. No, sorry." And Jerome, when he did the Latin Vulgate, he translated rakia to stereoma to firmamentum.
Yes.
From which the King James translators gave us firmament. Sorry. Yeah. And so, I'm doing that in-depth study of Genesis and looking at the Hebrew, Greek, and all this stuff. And then I started looking, Isaiah 40:22, right? We all know that. Well, we looked that up. And that's hug in Hebrew. That's circle. It's not dur, sphere. And Isaiah, oddly enough, is the only guy that used the word for sphere, and several chapters prior. So if you want to, and Isaiah is one of the last guys to write about this place. So he's writing in the context of Moses and David and Solomon and everybody else, Job, everybody that came before him. And both Job and Solomon tell you that the sky was firm, and Job hard like a molten looking glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the sky is hard like a molten looking glass. Solomon says he made firm the skies above, and he said he inscribed the circle on the face of the deep. And I look up the Hebrew word for the English, translated and inscribed, and it's kaukak, which means to cut like chisel and stone, like the Ten Commandments. So I'm going, wait a minute, there's no way hug, circle, means globe. It got worse and worse as that evening progressed, to the point where I became, like I said, easily within a week or two at the most, but I want to say probably within that first week of interviewing Mark Sargent, I became like dogmatically, absolutely certain that the Bible was describing a circular, still set on pillars under a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed on day 4. And that created a bit of a crucible for me.
I bet.
Because look, man, I was born June 26, 1969. A month later, I'm sitting in my mother's lap watching my dad take pictures of the television, taking pictures of the supposed Apollo 11 moon landings. So, after that, growing up on Star Trek and in 77 Star Wars, I can't stress enough, I loved all that stuff. My life.
All the sci-fi, yeah, man.
Look, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
well,
why.
And I imagine that your military experience, would have been an awesome, foot in the door, piloting.
Well, that's why I did it.
Yeah. That would have been your track right there, man. Yeah, sure.
Because I joined immediately out of high school, so I was 18. I gave myself a 10-year goal by because I had read somewhere that 28 was the cutoff.
Oh yeah.
For trying to, because it's a lot of fierce competition,
Sure.
And the astronauts, I mean, they're the top of the top. I mean, these guys are Top Gun type flyers.
Yeah.
So, and I had read somewhere that the astronauts had to learn helicopters before the lunar lander because I guess it's similar flight controls or whatever. So, and my dad flew helicopters, and he was a career man, still in the military at the time. And so I thought, I'll follow in Dad's footsteps. I'll learn helicopters. Once I get that down, I'll transition into the Air Force, and then I'll fly jets. And
nice. So so you had a whole plan, man. You had it mapped out.
I had it mapped out. I worked really hard.
And then things changed.
Well, I didn't understand at the time.
Yeah.
But I look back at it now, and I say, "Wow, Father, you protected me."
Yes.
Because I excelled. When you have a vision and a dream and it's your passion, you give it all you got. And I'm not bragging or anything, but I did work hard, and I graduated distinguished honor graduate of my classes. I was Soldier of the Year in 1990 or 91, beating out over 5,000 people in the 26 Yankee division.
Wow.
And I excelled at everything I did because I wanted that dream so badly. And I had school dates to take me to the next level of my training. Yeah. 4 times. 4 times I was accepted, and 4 times I was rejected for reasons outside of my control. It was like government cutbacks or something. It was always something out of my control. And actually, the last one, I was taking martial arts at the time, and I got clipped in the knee, and my knee was swollen. So when I went in for the flight physical, I couldn't squat like a duck.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't squat all the way down. And so they had to give me a waiver, and by the time my knee was better, I had missed the window, and somebody else got my slot. So,
bummer.
So that was like the 4th one, and it was at that time I thought, what, it's just not meant to be. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
So
when you transitioned, because you were already known as a very competent researcher, videographer, you had videos out, and honestly, one of the first videos that I saw of yours didn't have anything to do with, with flat Earth. It was about the Nephilim. It was about Nimrod. And then I found out that you also had, videos on biblical cosmology. But as you said, earlier, all of a sudden, this was a huge change, because even though probably because you were already known, as a very competent researcher, speaker, presenter, and then you became convinced of this truth and started sharing to that effect. So we've got about 10 or 11 minutes here before our break. So tell us a little bit about, what changed with that and how that was a bit of a crucible for you.
Yeah, well, like you said, and like I mentioned earlier, I'd already been traveling the world doing huge conferences, with lots of attendees and sharing the stage with people like, Tom Horn, L.A. Marzulli, and Doug Hamp, and, a whole lot of other researchers that I respected and that I had studied their work. I was sharing the stage with them, and, had somewhat made a name for myself, and by 2013 or so, going into 13, 14, our book sales and DVD sales and conferences were doing well for us,
Yeah.
When I stepped out of my full-time job, it was April 1st, 2010, when I stepped out to work on Seed. We stepped out into nothing. I mean, there's nothing there. It was ideas scribbled on a napkin, but, when God calls you, I believe he equips the called. He doesn't necessarily call the equipped. So, he carried us, and I know I've counseled you on this offline a few times. Yeah. When your job is like, Father's faithful. And, and I learned in those seasons, he's the God of 11:59 and 59 seconds.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like, the bill's due in 1 second.
Like, man, the mortgage is due now. Like, how are we going to pay this? And then all of a sudden you get it like a PayPal or a check in the mail or.
Exactly what happens. You get this random, somebody sends a check in the mail or something happens. It's always but it's amazing. He's an amazing provider.
Amen.
And we lived that way on a wing and a prayer on faith from April 2010, really well into 2013. Yeah. So a good several years of struggling, barely getting by, but always having our needs met. you know.
Mm-hmm.
But by, going into 2014, I had made a bit of a name for myself and become fairly well known on talk show circuit and stuff like that. And Amazon sales were good. And, one of my books had hit the Amazon bestseller list. So I was doing really well. The second book shortly followed after that. So things were good, Then when I started, and from April of 2015, I was just saying, hey, I'm looking into this. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was actually calling myself a zetetic agnostic.
Yeah.
A zetetic is proceeding with inquiry and investigation.
Mm-hmm.
An agnostic is somebody who's not yet convinced of either way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not to say I was an agnostic in my faith in God. It was I was agnostic in what my belief of the earth is.
Yes.
Because I was weighing both arguments. I become convinced the Bible was absolutely flat earth, but I didn't want to, I was having a hard time letting go of what I thought I knew to be true about the cosmos I was raised to believe, and was trying to reconcile the Bible with it, and the Bible wasn't budging. The Bible's like, nope.
Nope.
And I'm praying and crying out to God, like, what would I do with this? And his only answer to me was, look, I said what I said.
Exactly.
Take it or leave it. He wasn't explaining it. He wasn't, and he was like, look.
Here's the deal. Yeah. It's kind of like, the prophets, Jeremiah is basically told, hey, guess what? You're going to go not only to the people, but you're going to go to the nations and the kings, and you're going to tell them something that's going to make them want to kill you. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Like I would never compare myself with Jeremiah, but
Sure.
I do now understand the weeping prophet. He's got a message that nobody wants to hear, and he's like, look, I'm done. I'm not saying anything more. Forget it. And then this fire burns inside of him and won't let him shut up.
Yes.
So,
and you have to speak forth what you understand as truth. You
have to, or you're gonna explode.
Yes.
Or you end up like Jonah, which you're gonna get there one way or another. You're gonna take the secret route or the direct route. So we were attacked relentlessly, and book and DVD sales dried up. Whatever support we had from people that were supporting our ministry, people like, dude went crazy. I can't. This guy's an idiot. People were writing Amazon comments on my book saying, I used to think he was a good researcher, but now he thinks the word's flat. So how good he could he do the rest of this? And it hurt bad, dude. I mean, we found ourselves, we climbed and crawled our way up to, somewhat of a pinnacle, and then an avalanche knocked us right back down.
Wow.
And that was a terrible season for us, especially in the beginning of that in August. So I get introduced in April, start doing the research, and by August, Sheila's dad had cancer and he was dying on hospice. And, one of the last things I remember him saying to me before he lost, before he wasn't coherent enough to communicate with us, one of the last things I remember him saying was, dude, you got to let this go. It's going to destroy your ministry.
Wow.
Yeah, but Pappy, I can't. I can't let it go. I see what this says, and I gotta figure this out. And he died, not too long after that. And of course, that was a traumatic experience, certainly for Sheila and the whole family.
Yeah.
And my health was deteriorating at the time, probably stress related. I had sciatica so bad I could barely move, and my back was killing me. And I'm like, I can't, screw this, So I put the Phil Collins song, "I Don't Care Anymore."
Oh yeah.
I don't care anymore. I put that. I had, I don't know what started out as that first blog that I started writing. It got so big that I thought, this is too big for one blog. I'm gonna have to make a website out of it. So testingtheglobe.com became, I divided that blog up into chapters, and that's what the pages are on testingtheglobe.com. So I had dozens of pages on there, and I took them all down and put Phil Collins on every one of them. I don't care anymore.
Wow. And so you were done, man. You were like, I'm out. Yeah.
That was, I think it was if I remember right, I think it was the 16th of August, and a couple of days later, I got I think it was a handwritten letter that was sent to me by a former atheist. That he gave me a polite but firm scolding, saying, how dare you? He's like, I've been an atheist, a militant atheist my whole life. And I saw your stuff, and I realized there had to be a God, and I turned my life around. And, he gives me his testimony at the end of it. He says, I'm going to say something I've never said to anybody before in my life. He says, may God grant you the courage and the strength to continue on the path that he's called you on.
Wow.
And so on the 20th of August, I put it back up. So, Yeah, I took it down because of all the pressure I was getting from Christians, and put it back up because of a pressure from a former atheist who had given his life to God 4 days later.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I think we're going to see if we can add Robbie in here for just a minute. We'll be going to break here in just a couple minutes, but let's see if we can't sneak Robbie in.
All right.
Real quick here before we go to break. Robbie, you there with us, bud?
I'm here.
Hey. How's the party?
It went really well. So yeah, I thought we were going to be doing something more in the afternoon, but we decided to do something more in the evening. But yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, 75 years my father is, and we got the whole family together. So we're just up in Valley View, Alberta, which is
awesome.
About 4 hours away from my city.
Cool. Well, yeah, Rob has been given just a great I guess, a timeline of things that happened in his truth awakening. And he was just sharing about, when he came to the whole flat earth understanding and how things really dropped quickly with his support and, just the trial of all of that. And how that happened. And so I think what we'll do is we'll be going to break here in just a minute or two. When we come back from break, I definitely want, sometimes, Rob, we let our hair down a little bit more in the second hour. We definitely want to talk to you about your experience at the UFO conference and maybe a little bit more about SEED and whatever, what other things you would like to discuss or Robbie has questions or thoughts on. But I think it's really important for people to, hear your story and your testimony, because some of us in the truth community, we have some things that are similar in our testimony, but I really do believe that each person is different. And there are some specific things like you've shared that are specific to you and what the Father had for you to do, using your skills, your talents, and even some failures, like you said, not, having doors closed to things that you thought that you wanted to pursue. And so, it's real important for people to understand. Probably, I imagine you would agree, the most important thing that you did as a prerequisite for all of this was to have a fervent prayer, to really just want to seek truth, to understand it, and to know, what does the Father want me to do, need me to do? And as you said, you turned over direction, from you being the producer to basically saying, okay, Father, I'll be your cameraman. You just tell me where to go and I'll start shooting. So I think that's great, that you had that frame of mind. And I can say, although some of my situation was different as far as how that panned out, it was the fervent prayer that definitely was important. So we're going to go to break here, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, continuing our discussion with Rob SKIBA here on Revolution Radio and Celebrate Truth. We'll be back, so hang in with us.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey guys, we are back, and this is Nate Wolf, co-host for Celebrate Truth Radio, and Robbie D is in the house, so we're going to bring him in here to help us lead into the second hour. But want to just say that Rob SKIBA, our special guest, was ending the first hour just sharing about some of the transition and hardships of continuing to teach on flat earth, biblical cosmology. And so we're going to let him finish anything he wants to say on that, and then kind of just bring us up to date now. And then we'll probably dive into some real interesting subjects, some conferences that he's been to recently that are pretty exciting. So Robbie Davidson, good to have you back with us, brother. And Rob SKIBA, why don't you finish up pick up where you left off, and anything else that you wanted to share about that portion of the journey?
Sure. Like I said in the previous segment, I was calling myself a zetetic agnostic for that first year.
Yeah.
And that changed when Rick Hummer and I did the Lake Michigan test. Back in 2015, the Joshua Nowicki picture became pretty famous that he took of Chicago from nearly 60 miles away on the other side of Lake Michigan. And that was sent to an ABC News affiliate, and the weatherman got on there and said, what you're seeing here is a mirage. Now, if you look at that picture, nobody would look at that picture and think that's a mirage. Mirages are upside down, wavy, distorted. This is right side up, and yes, it may be vertically stretched a little bit, but for the most part, the buildings look very, straight, symmetrical. They look, like a city. And so Rick Hummer, he lives near that area where Joshua Nowicki took that picture. Yeah, and so he's like, dude, that ain't no mirage. I mean, I've seen it. I could go out there and probably today and see it. I mean, we all see it. And so I said, hey, man, we got to talking about it, and we were like, we got to do something to prove that that's not a mirage. And so we started putting a plan together for renting a boat. And, all the, we did a bunch of experiments together. We did high altitude weather balloon launches and all kinds of stuff. And nearly everything that we did cost me personally close to $2,000 or more. Wow. The Lake Michigan trip alone was like $2,500 between airfare, hotel, rental car, and contracting the boat and all that stuff. And I was paying for that, out of my pocket. It wasn't like I had a whole lot of money, and that money was going away quickly because our support was drying up. But I was like obsessed with these things and trying to find answers to them. And it took over a year for us to finally get the timing right, where A, I had the money. B, the weather was right. We tried to do it a few times during the wintertime, and no boat captain would do it. They're like, what, you got a death wish? What, are you crazy? No. Yeah. And so, we're watching like 10-day forecasts, looking for a window that would fit our schedule and our budget. And we saw a window open up in June of 2016. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. I've got the money saved up, and it looks like a good window of weather. You work on getting the boat captain, and I'll work on getting up there. And, we did the trip, and it was like the perfect day. And it stormed the day before and it stormed the day after. But that particular day, we're a little further south than where Joshua Nowicki took his picture because we couldn't charter a boat from further north. So, we did the best we could. And, the distance we were at was like 46 miles versus something like 53 miles. So I wasn't too concerned with the difference. I was like, either way. So we pull out of the dock, and I look across, and I can see it with my naked eye. I'm like, there it is. Of course, we had the Nikon Coolpix P900 camera and a few other cameras. And, my theory was, if it's a mirage, let's drive toward it, because if it's a mirage, it's going to magically disappear, and then the city will roll up over the ball, and, okay, there you go. It's a mirage. Yeah. If it's not a mirage, then the city's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger in the camera. Well, that's exactly what it did. Now, the detractors would say, look at my footage and see, well, yeah, you're still missing the lower portion of the building. So see, proof of curvature. Well, no, not necessarily, and even the weatherman, he came on and actually debunked himself a year later. Exactly. So right about the time we're doing that trip, it might have been the exact same time or very close to it. He came back on the air a year later and said, I've gotten so many emails because, this poor weatherman inadvertently became famous because, with haters and, people are supporting him.
What we're seeing is a mirage.
Yeah. I mean, that poor guy didn't know what he was getting into, but he came on like a year later exactly to the day and said, hey, I was wrong. I was mistaken. It's not really a mirage. So he went to some university and found some optics professor or something, and they had a whole show based on that. And said, well, technically it's really not a mirage. It's called looming. And in this broadcast, they said the atmosphere acts like a lens, and they put a convex lens in front of the camera, and they're saying, well, that's how it throws the city magically up over the curve for you to see it for so far away. So I took what they said, Globers, what they said, and then I went online and started looking at how much moisture is in the air. Man, there's an ocean in the air, a lot of freaking moisture in the air. Yeah. And, we're talking zillions of microscopic convex balls of water, moisture. And, well, you put them all together and you get one big convex lens. And what's a convex lens? It's a magnifying glass. And the optics professor from the university specifically said that the atmosphere acts like a magnifying glass. So I said, okay, well, maybe that explains why the lower portion of the city is missing. So I went out and got some magnifying glass stuff, did some experiments, and showed how on a perfectly flat table, I could make the lower portion of the city disappear just by moving my camera back from the magnifying glass.
Yeah.
And then later on, I thought, well, maybe that's how sunsets work too. And I figured out how, I rigged up a little thing with the sun, at a fixed height above the flat plane of the table, moved it back, and sure enough, the sun set. Not only did it set, but it maintained pretty darn close to the same optical size, when it was up against the glass versus when it was pulled away from the glass. Because even though it's getting further away without the magnifying glass, naturally it gets smaller.
Yeah.
But with the magnifying glass, when you pull it away, it basically magnifies the perspective as it's going away. It should be getting smaller, but it magnifies it, so it basically cancels out and looks like the same size, but it sets on a flat surface. So, we saw so many things on that lake that when I came back, I had continued that same prayer for a year. Father, what do I do with this? And, for a whole year, it was like, look, I said what I said. When I came back from that trip, his answer changed to, are you going to believe me now, Rob, or what?
Nice.
And that's when I finally just said to say, you know what, I give up. Yep. There's I'll tell you, even to this day, I'm still probably 80-20 in my mind. 80% in favor, 20% still have doubts and questions. And that probably will never get resolved. But I was 100% scripture. And when I looked at all the other things that I was trusting in for that 20% that I still question, when I consider the sources of that information, I'm like, look, you know what? I've never been given any reason to doubt the truth and the authority of Scripture. I've been given every reason to doubt these other things.
Sure.
And it was actually Bill Schneblin, another researcher, who I was sitting in the parking lot of Walmart the day after Rick and I did that test, and we had interviewed a ship captain, and he went on this long, because I wanted to see what other captains and people who had been on the lake their whole life, what they've seen. And this captain went on this whole thing about light refraction and bending and blah, 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 yada, yada, bending light and gravity and yada, yada. And I thought to myself, you know what? This one guy represents millions of detractors on YouTube and Facebook that, you can't win this fight. And I was so depressed. I was like, I give up. I just freaking, I'm spending all this money, and it seemed like every test we did came back inconclusive because you always had a million yeah buts. You say, well, here's the evidence, and then 500 people say, well, yeah, but, and then you play yeah, but to their yeah, but, and you just play yeah, but. And I was really bummed out, and I was just looking on Facebook, sitting in my car in this Walmart parking lot, and I saw that Bill Schneblin had put up a video dedicated to me, and he was not necessarily dedicated to me, but I mean he was thanking me for taking such a firm stand on Scripture to the point where he was making his public confession of saying, you know what, I'm just going to believe Scripture.
Oh, wow.
And, that was when he first came out as a flat earther based on Scripture. And it was at the end of his video, he's like, they lie to us about vaccinations. They lie, they poison our skies. They do all, he went on this long list about what quote unquote science has done for us and the lies, in the textbooks and all that. And, he took a stand on it. I said, you know what, Father? Okay. And, so it was kind of strange because in a way I was, my materials were responsible for him making that confession. And then his video thanking me for doing that was responsible for me doing it. Finally just saying, fine, whatever, God, you are the truth, and I'm going to take a stand on what you said.
Yeah.
Everything. It was at that point that two things happened, and it's pretty profound change. The verbal persecution, and I hesitate to use the word persecution because, like I said earlier, I've been in countries where people are actually physically being persecuted, and I don't want to diminish by using the word what these people are going through. But I was taking, let's just say, verbal abuse, and a lot of crap. That significantly increased, but at the same time, the favor of God on my life radically increased along with it. And I just started seeing blessing, like a lot of blessing coming our way. And things started to turn. Well, flash forward even a couple years later, here I'm at the Declaring the End from the Beginning conference. I think it was earlier this year, January maybe.
Yeah, it was end of February, yeah.
For the February? So yeah, you were at that conference.
No, I was in California, but it was the same week. It was actually the same days. It was like February 22nd through the 24th. So it was actually the same exact dates.
That's right. It was like
Only you were in Arkansas. Yeah, Robbie and I were in California. You were in Arkansas, right. Same dates.
Yeah, Joe had asked me if I wanted to be a part of that conference like a week after I'd already committed to the other one, so I couldn't do that. But I'm glad. It was such a blessing. I mean, there were, I don't know, a couple hundred people, 200, maybe 300.
Nice. It
was a good size audience, whatever it was. And at the beginning of it, I haven't posted this online yet, but I said, I'm just going to do a little something here. I'm going to ask a question, kind of put myself out. How many of you would say that you have come to a greater understanding of the scriptures or a closer relationship with God and Yeshua or all of the above as a result of this topic? Raise your hand. And like people not only raise their hand, but they stood up. And I would say easily 95% of the room stood up.
Wow.
And so I'm like, I almost teared up on the stage. I'm like, oh man. So I says, can you guys just hold on a second? I'm going to get my cell phone out because I got to document this for myself to remind myself of why I'm doing this. Right. So I just did like a video panoramic of the room of everybody standing up just to remind myself, how the tables have turned. Because in 2015, when I hadn't even committed yet, I was at a conference on a panel discussion, and the guy moderating the panel said, okay, we're going to start off here with Rob SKIBA. Rob, this was May 2015. I just got introduced to the topic in April. Okay, May. He says, so Rob, you still believe the Earth's flat? Of course, everybody starts laughing at me. And then letter writing campaigns went out, and people were doing everything they could to ban me from speaking at conferences anymore. And then I couldn't even attend them anymore. Wow. And, just how intense it was in 15, then we flash forward to 2019, and what a reversal. Like now pastors and ministries and creation ministries in particular are taking a beating for not taking a stand.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, Father, you're doing something really cool here. And, I just have to thank him for giving me the strength to make it this far, because, those first couple of years were freaking brutal.
That's incredible. Like, it's incredible watching your journey, Rob, like going through all the time in 2015. And even at the time, I know how frustrating it was for a lot of people, because, you would just like pretty much be preaching it hardcore from the Bible, but you're like, but I don't believe, I'm not a flat earther, and just to see exactly everything that you've gone through, the attack and the beautiful things that have come from it. And just, I would say, like, you brought up a couple, tests that you've done and the stuff when you get into refraction and stuff. I was at a meetup just last night, and people were, all talking about, certain videos you've done. And I know, in New Zealand, other conferences I've been, I mean, I have not yet been to a place where you have not been used by God in a significant way to really amazingly impact someone's life, incredible, from atheists, from, all sorts of different areas. Your name gets brought up a lot. And I mean, God, for whatever reason, has chose you. And again, that's the one thing sometimes you need to be reminded of. But it's like, if you could like just somehow compile all those testimonies or just hear them one by one, I mean, it really would solidify like why, you're doing this. I mean, you're being obedient to God's will. You're answering the call, and it can be tough sometimes, but it's amazing. And to me, I wanted to transfer into this because, when we got into the latest conference you were at, you were texting me quite a bit, and there was a lot of excitement based on being at that UFO conference. And what I wanted to talk about to make sure that you had the time to speak on was not only what, was really highlighted at that conference, what really stuck out for you, but also I'm really curious to know now, kind of going into the next phase of Rob SKIBA, or phase 3 or phase 4, as you move into seed and how your worldview has now completely shifted, how that pertains to seed. Because I don't think, I've never fully even understood it or even asked you. So it'd be good if you could kind of maybe just go over that, obviously the conference, but then also kind of let the listeners know with Seed the Project a little bit about that. But also, how does this whole enclosed cosmology change the whole direction of Seed that, basically was given that vision, years and years ago? And it seems like it's morphing, but it's almost like you had to go through these different paths in order to come back to do Seed properly, the way God wanted it done.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you for sharing that too. I had written a lot of Seed prior to getting into this research. And it dealt with aliens, UFOs, the Nephilim, Nimrod, government conspiracies, all that kind of stuff. Was all that research that I'd done from like 2010 to up to 2014. So, that's what I become known for. And then when I got into Flat Earth, in 2015, was after a year of getting back onto seed. I was going full speed ahead in 2014 on seed, and it was like stopped. And actually, it was December of 2014 that I had done a 10-hour teaching series called the Yahuwah Triangle. That at that time, I thought this was my magnum opus. This was like my whole life's work. Like the most significant thing I've ever done, I felt like was that set of research. And then he dumps Flat Earth on me, and I look back at it now and see, okay, wow, because part 1 of that 10-hour series was all about the globe. Like the whole first part is the globe, right? And so then 15, God's like, yeah, wait a minute. And so as I started doing more research on Flat Earth, I started to realize, oh geez, I got to rewrite, like huge portions of seed had to be rewritten. There's a whole bunch of it that I just completely scrapped and had to start over. But as a result, it's become a much richer, much deeper story, and we'll come back to this. But the reason I call it seed is for a variety of reasons. And one of the reasons is I'm going to be planting seeds based on all of the research I've ever done in my life is going into this to get people to start thinking about these topics from a biblical worldview. Nice. Another part of this is the first prophecy in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 3, is where Yahuwah, God, tells the serpent that Eve's seed's going to crush his head. Well, that's when a seed war began right there. So, it deals with all of that. But when you put all that into a enclosed world, cosmological worldview, I mean, wow, the seed war became a whole lot more interesting to me personally and a whole lot more sobering, I think, when I think of the grand scale of things. And so when I saw this conference come up, I just found out about it like, I don't know, a week or two before it happened. It was called the Contact in the Desert Conference. It was held in Indian Wells, California. Interestingly enough, right down the street from the same hotel that I stayed at when I was out there with Mark Sargent and everybody doing the Salton Sea thing. It was right around the corner from there, practically. So here I am in the same location again, and now I'm attending a huge conference. There was easily 5,000 people there. Wow. And 50 speakers, and these are all the who's who of ancient aliens, like Eric Von Daniken, Giorgio, the guy with the hair, Dr. Michael Salas, Michael Tellinger, lots of people.
By the way, that post, sorry to interject, but by the way, that post that you put up with you and him, I don't know, but I think it has the record for the most likes or for the most activity. I was blown away, right? I was like, wow.
Yeah. Let me tell you about that for the audience. I assume maybe many of your audience already knows who Michael Tellinger is. If you don't, you should check out his research. He's got a lot of great stuff. Well, I as I was attending these panel discussions and conferences, individual lectures and stuff, and I attended his, he was on a panel discussion with several other people, and I literally just written down in my notebook, I think Michael Tellinger is the only one that may get it. Mm-hmm. Like, I just wrote that down. And right after I wrote, literally, like, you could count 5 seconds after I wrote that, there was a guy that was sitting right next to him that was speaking. Hugh Newman, I think was his name, something like that. Anyway, the guy right next to him was talking, and he turns to Michael and he says, and by the way, it is a sphere, Michael, and like jabbed him. Oh. And I was like, because I had heard some things from Michael that made me think he may be leaning that direction. That just confirmed it. So after that it was over, I ended up going up to Michael's booth, and I said, hey, I really enjoyed your talk there. And he's looking at me and he's like, do I know you? I think I know you. And I was like, oh, you may have seen a YouTube video or something. And he's like, Rob SKIBA? He's like, I didn't recognize, because I got a beard now. He's like, I didn't recognize you with the beard. He's like, I love your stuff, man. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Like, I went there to tell him I love his stuff, and he's like, sweet, saying this. So we did a selfie together, and I posted it on Facebook. And he's coming here next month to Dallas to do a solo conference. So we're going to try to hook up, hopefully, maybe go to dinner with his wife or something. And, Sheila and I go out with them. We'll see. But this conference, first of all, Robbie, you've put on several conferences now, and what do we see at these conferences? But, cameras everywhere, news media everywhere, right?
Everywhere, yeah.
And they're there for the express purpose of getting, whatever ridiculous shots they can possibly get to make us look stupid and put out another hit piece with goofy music, right? Well, I mean, you want to talk about a freak show. There were some pretty freaky people at this conference. And if you just looked at the booths, I mean, it's like alien this and organite that and get into your chakra this. And, I'm really a Palladian. I'm a representative of the, Arcturans. And I mean, wow.
Make us look pretty normal.
And let me guess, no mainstream massive news coverage.
If they were there, they were invisible. I did not see them. Unlike our conference, all you saw were lights and cameras everywhere.
Everywhere,
And we're talking big news cameras, not like little home cameras.
Sure. I think every major news network, I've actually put them together now, and I think everyone's included now. There's not one major news network, that's not included on the list as far as like NBC, CBS, TV, getting into all of those, Canada and U.S. for that matter.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm thinking to myself, where's the, especially considering like the week of the conference, we had Washington Post and mainstream news outlets talking about, guess what, UFOs exist, and we might need to adjust our thinking about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. So I mean, that only basically empowered all these speakers. I mean, can you imagine like 3 days before the Dallas conference, people saying, new evidence the Earth may be a plane, right?
Yeah, crazy.
It's that kind of earth-shattering revelation right before a conference that every speaker likes to validate what they're saying.
Sure.
So needless to say, all these speakers were really jazzed up and pumped and ready to go. So they're giving it their best, and at first I'm kind of enjoying it just for what it is. I'm taking extensive notes, but as the weekend progressed, I'm getting more and more like convicted and just so sobering what is happening here. And look, I appreciate the research, I appreciate the evidence. It's the conclusions that I disagree with. Especially if you watch the TV series Ancient Aliens, right? They're 11, 12 seasons now on the History Channel.
Yeah.
The evidence is real. The evidence is compelling. It's the conclusions, that they arrive at that I disagree with. And so as the weekend progressed, and I start to listen to what these speakers are saying, and there's a sense of urgency. That was one of the things that I came away with probably the most. Is there's a profound sense of urgency on that side of the camp, in the sense that now with they consider what just happened to be a soft disclosure. Everybody's talking about disclosure. When are the governments finally going to disclose to everybody that we know that there's alien life? Well, this was what they consider a soft disclosure. What's a hard disclosure? Well, the aliens are here, and guess what? They're going to park over the city tomorrow, and then boom, mile wide ships over the city. Well, they're that's in Independence Day, right? That's V.
Oh yeah, we've all been pre-programmed through many movies on that deal.
Totally. So with soft disclosure coming out the way it is, and what these people are saying, many of these people claim to have inside information. Some say it's direct contact through abduction. Others have whistleblowers supposedly from high levels of government feeding them information from the aliens. And I gather through listening to these people that there's something like 197 different alien species that are concerned with Earth and have been regularly interacting with it. Now, from my biblical worldview, even before getting into flat Earth, I rejected all that and considered all alien and that sort of thing to be more fallen angel, demonic, Nephilim.
Correct. And there were some biblical speakers there in the mix, or none?
No, none that I saw anyway. Michael might be the closest, although many of them certainly gave a nod to Scripture, but then they grossly manipulate it. I mean, Eric von Daniken, his whole first lecture that I attended was a gross manipulation of the book of Ezekiel.
Okay.
I mean, he literally preached from Ezekiel, but anywhere it said angels, it was aliens. Anywhere it said heaven, it was space. And the wheel within the wheel and all that—that's a UFO. It's a space.
Okay.
So they'll toss the Bible out there to, as if to give them credibility for what they're saying. But it was clear, abundantly clear, that the dominating worldview was very much an evolutionary mindset, because it was always, we got to evolve to our next level of higher consciousness, and
and that's the point of disclosure. That's the point that they're finally going to have contact with humanity, to teach them, to prepare them. Like, what was the consensus there? I'm always curious.
Yeah.
Based on that conference, what is it that they want to tell us, or what is it they want to warn us about?
Well, it doesn't take much for any of us to realize, this world is going to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. Geopolitically, but also, just the Earth itself with geoengineering.
The whole we're going to destroy the planet, so we're kind of intervening because guys are. Yeah, that's what it feels like is going to happen. Is okay. I think things are going to get really bad. Worse, far worse than they are right now, and so we're going to see. You just watch the weather patterns and things that have been happening. We had a storm. It was a microblast storm that hit. Dude, I saw it. I was about to text you one night because I'm like, dude, did you just get that? But I saw that massive wind, hailstorm, whatever that was.
Dude, it lasted it was like 10 minutes, but we felt like we were in a tornado. And we had just set up. We got this 6x6 greenhouse tent that has a aluminum metal frame, and we had just built it a week ago, and staked it down and everything. That picked up. It flew over our 6-foot fence and into the front yard and was heading down the street if Sheila didn't grab it, put under some trees, and broke tree branches and stuff. And it was very 60-mile-an-hour winds, very violent for 10 minutes, and then it was nice and sunny. But I personally believe all of this is human engineered. That it's happening, whatever the case, whether it's human geoengineering or just the Earth is going through some sorts of changes. No question, the whole world is experiencing crazy wildfires and storms.
Yeah.
And, we lose the breadbasket, and there goes our food, and
the bird pains, right? It's going through the bird pains.
Yeah. And then you see things heating up with Russia, North Korea, Iran, and all kinds of stuff. So what it feels like is that geopolitically and just naturally or man-made whatever, Earth changes are going to get to a point where it's going to get so bad that these guys are going to show up as our saviors and say, okay, kids, enough's enough. They're going to fix the environment. They're going to stop war. They're going to give us all kinds of wonderful things, and when you listen to the various speakers, like Whitley Strieber is one of the more famous contact guys. He wrote a book, what was it? It wasn't Contact. It was Communion.
Yeah, Communion. Yeah. That was a freaky movie, by the way.
Well, is he still around? He's still around, eh?
Yeah. He was at the conference.
Wow.
And I met him, Travis Walton from the movie Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
Another
that was a freaky movie. That really messed me up. That movie, even as a Christian, it messed me up. That's a whole other show for another time. But I don't know what was going on there. But as a Christian, I was still messed up. I had to do a lot of watching that.
Well, but all these guys, initially when all their first contact experiences happened, it was all very terrifying. But you listen to these guys now, and they are reinterpreting their own experiences and saying, you know what, I didn't understand. Like I was listening to Travis Walton, and he was saying, you know what, when I stepped into that beam of light, it may have screwed me up. My whole body may have been screwed up by the radiation of it, and they were just trying to fix me, and I didn't understand it. I was afraid. And so now they're talking. Everything is shifted from trauma to love.
Really? Wow.
These beings, they love us, but they talk about the reptilians are the evil ones, and the Nordics are the good ones, and there are varieties within those two classifications.
Sure.
But that there's an intergalactic species war out there happening, and Earth is turning into ground zero, and we're the most important. And Dr. Michael Salla said that through, because I always have these whistleblowers and contactees and different people giving them their information, that supposedly aliens had communicated to us that 350 years in the future, there's going to be a galactic tyranny that sweeps through, and it's just a tyrannical reign. And when the historians on these ancient of these alien worlds tracked back the founding of this tyranny, it was traced back to our Earth, our moon, and Mars. And so that's why all these aliens are coming here, because they're trying to stop whatever is going to lead to this for them it's ancient, but for us it's coming galactic tyranny. Well,
but it all hinges on Earth. Like basically this entire storyline, it hinges on kind of the events on Earth.
What happens here? Well, if we throw that into our biblical framework, we know that we have this thing called the millennial reign of Christ. And if these alien beings are what, the three of us believe they are, fallen angels and stuff like that, well, it makes sense that they would be talking about a galactic tyranny.
Sure.
Sure. Because we know that the heavens are going to pass away with, with a great noise and fire, and, all the stars are going to fall to Earth.
Correct.
So, of course, for us, that's a whole different viewpoint in an enclosed world cosmology, but these people are buying it hook, line, and sinker. And so what I see is Psalm 2 talks about the nations of the world gathered together to conspire against the one who's on the throne. And Revelation 19:19 says the nations of the world have gathered together to make war with him who's coming on the horse, which would be Yeshua, Jesus Christ. So, I'm filtering all this information. I'm listening to all these guys, and I'm going, man, wow. But what was sobering to me is just how devastating this is going to be to all religions in general, but Christianity specifically. And Paul talks about it. He says there's going to be a great falling away. That's apostasy. And what I saw this past weekend has every single ingredient for that apostasy to happen instantaneously. I mean, when and you look into things like the Montauk Project and the Montauk Chair and supposed time travel and stuff, and there's a documentary you guys should check out called the Montauk Chronicles, fairly recent release, but it talks about using this, and this gets into the Philadelphia experiment and all kinds of different things, but using time travel, people have supposedly been sent back in time to get DNA samples from various historical and religious figures, and they actually show in this documentary like an animation of one of these guys going back with basically a syringe and taking a sample from the bloody feet of Jesus on the cross, and they're setting it up. In several documentaries I've watched this in the last week. I watched another one on Michael Myers. Was it Michael? I don't know. I think it's Michael Myers and Billy Myers. Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Halloween.
Michael Myers Halloween.
Billy Myers. Billy Myers is an abductee, famous in the 1960s. Well, he was in this documentary. It says that he was told by the aliens to go to Israel, to this location, and to find this tomb that they eventually found and dug up. And inside this tomb was some jars that had some ancient papyrus or whatever papyri writings in it. And in the writings, it basically says, this Yeshua, this Jesus character, he's one of us, but, he didn't really die. He was revived by our magical arts. And the Palladians were telling Billy that, the religions are false, that the Christianity is a false religion based on one of our people that did come here to try to enlighten mankind. So there's this whole narrative that has been set up, going at least as far back as the 60s, probably long before that, if we consider when these things are planted in tombs like that in Israel, and other places. And all of a sudden it makes sense that why the Dead Sea Scrolls were preserved in the book of Enoch specifically. You open that book up, and the first chapter, first few verses, the first chapter says, this book is not for this generation, but for a remote generation that will live in the day of tribulation. Well, that's us. And it exposes everything that's happening right now. So now I'm at this conference, I'm thinking, well, that's why I had to do all this Nephilim research. I get that. And now that's why I had to do the flat earth research, because enclosed biblical cosmology destroys all of those lies.
Exactly.
All of them.
Yeah.
But the aliens, according to the abductees and Stryber, I meant to finish the story. Whitley Stryber said that the aliens had contacted him in February of this year and said, it is critically important that you write a book that it's a how-to book for people to achieve the level of higher consciousness ascension that's needed for our emergence. And you better have it done by March, or you're not going to like what happens to you. So he was literally threatened, supposedly, by these entities to write this book. And he said, I finished the book in March. It's with the publisher now for editing. But, there's a sense of urgency that the aliens are telling these people that we've got to prepare mankind now for our arrival. And between government disclosure and all these other things ramping up, I really do believe that something very soon probably is going to happen. And like I said in the interview I did with the guys from Parable of the Vineyard the other day, I forgot that, but if you don't know where you are biblically speaking, in our relationship with God and where we are in his cosmos, you are going to be, I'm telling you, I've got 50 DVDs here, 2 hours long, and I'm trying to get through them all. This information is so compelling. I consider myself to be pretty solid in my faith and understanding, and it still shakes me up.
Oh, there's no doubt. But 50 years ago, you had the Hollywood, you had the conspiratorial. But the thing what's so striking to me, Rob, is science. Scientists are coming forward and saying that likelihood of this is absolutely like a 500%. They're saying that, this is pretty much a guarantee that, some other evolved species from somewhere in the universe, seeded us. And so when you have actually science now merging in with Hollywood and the media and, that whole thing, now it takes on a more serious vibe. And I say that we're dealing at a time and age now where, science, and scientism exposed to, we talk about a lot of this stuff with, the aliens, but also you had like Bill Nye talking to Ken Ham saying, oh yeah, we came from Martians. He's like,
exactly.
He's like, and that's not crazy. Like you're saying from, to Adam and Eve, and you're saying we came from Martians. And he's like, no, he goes, it's probable. But I'm saying that's what I think is a lot different. Like you said, Rob, that something might be getting a lot closer is because now science, dignified with their white lab coats, are saying, that's pretty much exactly what everything is pointing to.
Well,
it gets verifying it.
It actually gets, and it dovetails very interestingly into what we are in the flat Earth community are looking into. Mm-hmm. Everybody is concerned with Antarctica.
Yeah.
The key to figuring out everything, no matter what your worldview is, appears to be in Antarctica and whatever's going on in the north. Now, the only person that I heard that weekend was Brooks Agnew. He was the only one that addressed the north. In fact, he's trying to, and I guess he's pretty darn close to being able to accomplish the goal of organizing an event, exploration to find the what Admiral Byrd found in the north. Supposedly an entrance to inner Earth. Now, if you listen to Zen Garcia's information on the paradise and the sides of the north, and Mount Meru and all that from a biblical and the point of view of other ancient authors, I do believe there's a significant something to be found in the north, but there's a lot of activity going on in Antarctica, and a lot of the panel discussions and speakers talked about Admiral Byrd certainly, but in 2007, I think it was 16, 17, whatever. During the election, here we have a major United States election, and you got people like John Kerry, taking off to go to Antarctica.
Sure.
And then you have Buzz Aldrin going down there supposedly, and then having a heart attack, and then he tweets, pure evil, we're all gonna die, or whatever it was. He tweeted that got everybody freaked out. Well, the speakers of the conference talked a lot more about these things, and they always have some special forces insider, whistleblower, or whatever, confidant that gave him information. But you listen to these testimonies of what they're saying and what's down there. That's the key to figuring out what's going on, and that's why it's so locked down. And one of the guys that was there, Brad Olson, he had spent something like 26 days down there fairly recently. He's like, it's from the globe perspective, it's the 5th largest continent on Earth, and there's only 1,000 human beings down there.
Mm-hmm.
So that just shows you how much is not being covered, even from their model.
Sure.
From our model, it's even bigger. It's a 60,000 mile circumference, wall that probably extends inland anywhere from 800 to 1,200 miles, from the coast. Whatever the case may be, there's a big effort down there, and they're saying that we are from Mars. That Mars was at one point much more capable of sustaining life, but it went through some kind of calamity of its own. So the Martians came here in arcs, and they landed in Antarctica. and still down there. And when they got here 33 million years ago, they began to, do whatever they were doing, and then saw life evolving here. And they were the ones that kickstarted evolution through panspermia to ancient hominids to get monkeys to stand upright, 2 million years ago. So it was all that narrative. It was all millions and billions of years and light years and millions and years of evolution and all that stuff in Antarctica.
Yeah, that seems to get you on the History Channel. It really, that's the whole striking thing about this, is you can have like ancient aliens on the History Channel. And the one thing, even getting into a little bit about just the censorship that's happening, in social media and specifically with YouTube, you don't find any censorship with UFOs. No. I mean, if anything, it's just positive. They don't try to hide any of that, and they never have, and they never will. And that's something that always is, people should take into consideration, is like, why, if it's so crazy or so like such a crazy conspiracy, why, some of the ones that they're actually highlighting. I actually just posted from The Sun in the UK that the title read that YouTube finally is now seriously clamping down on fake news, starting with flat Earth theories.
Yep.
Like, why would they start with flat Earth? Like, you know what I mean? If it's so crazy and stupid. But I agree with you with Antarctica. It is just so mysterious. Those are the two pivotal points to me. It's Antarctica and also the moon, right? Those are the two kind of things. Once you crack those foundations, then everything kind of opens up, and you're left with a lot of questions. So you found like a central theme pretty much with everyone is talking. They're kind of talking and reiterating the stuff with Antarctica.
Well, in the moon, because even in that community. Now, this is what's so bizarre. You could go to one conference, one lecture, and the guy's like, the alien grays and everything, they're pure evil, what they did to me, and, they can't actually eat food like humans. They accept nutrients through their skin, and so they will literally take baths in the blood of their victims, and, just horror stories of, creation of hybrids, and, Nightmare Row in Dulce Base, New Mexico, deep underground military bases, what happens to abductees. You have the horror of all that in one room. In the next room, you go to another lecture, and they're like, no, they're all about love, and they want to get us to a higher level of consciousness. And like everybody will say, we don't trust the government and we don't trust NASA. And yet every one of them are using information given to them by NASA and the government for everything they do.
Side note, are all these speakers all fighting with each other on social media? No, probably not. They're probably a little bit more professional than that, correct?
Yeah, I haven't.
Are they all really nasty with one another?
I have not seen. I saw a little bit of friendly rivalry, like in the case of Mike Tellinger, but I didn't see. Yeah. I'll take that back. There was one guy that I was listening to. He's like, all these other guys, they're full of crap. They don't know what they're talking about.
There's always one of them, I guess.
Yeah. He said that. He was the only one that I heard say that, but. They were definitely a lot more united than certainly our camp is. And I just heard about what happened with Patricia Steer. I talked to Dave Weiss.
I had talked with her. It's a truly sad story. And I had talked to her just a day prior. I said, you know what, like, why don't you take a break for 3-4 months, solid, right? Deactivate your Facebook, just leave, step away completely. Don't look at it. And honestly, but things even transpired from 24 hours, and she's like, no, like, I'm done, 100%, 110%. And I believe it because, before Mark, she'd get down with a lot of stuff. I mean, anybody, Rob, the way it is just for men to go through it. You imagine a woman, right? And honestly, I'm saying that, like, honestly, it's not for the faint of heart. And also for a woman, I mean, it's gonna get very personal. And it just over time just grinded her down. But no, I'm truly sad. Like I was saying, I met up with Matt Long. I was at a meetup yesterday and stuff, and I said, I don't know why, but I'm truly sad. I'm sad because getting to know Patricia, this stuff was just so vicious, so vile, so wrong. And some of the people, even claiming themselves to be brothers and being Christians, to me that just came off even worse. I just felt even sicker because I'm like, wow, they went to town. Speaking of which, one individual put up a video saying, "Ding dong, the witch is dead." That was the latest video he just put up. So yeah, just that type of stuff is it's just so hurtful. And if they could understand kind of the pain that she was going through, but I don't want to make it all about the drama and stuff that's going on. But we all know that in its infancy, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people. The beautiful thing though is I think like with the conferences, they represent a lot of people that are coming out. I look at that honestly as the true real community, right? These are the people that really want to come out. They want to meet. They want to grow in their research. And honestly, that part is really good, I guess, but we can say this about any camp, online. There's vicious people online. Just read YouTube comments. You want to see the depravity of mankind? Look at YouTube comments on any video, man. There's nastiness going on. Any video, right? So it's not just kind of our camp or their camp. But I do find it fascinating with just how cohesive it is when it comes to uniting with so many different varying views, the grays and this and that. And I know there might be some extremes, but overall, it just trucks forward. But the central message, like you said, there's like an urgency, and it's almost like I see this even with media. It's like, you guys, we either have to help you because there's a coming alien attack, or global warming is going to kill you, or cancer is going to kill you, and we've got to cure stuff for you because we love you, we care for you, But it has merged into this, again, getting into the watchers. We've been watching you, we care for you, we're your creators. So of course there's going to be that benevolence in there, and I'm seeing a lot more of that rather than these ones that are very hostile. If anything, the hostile ones, there's a group of, angels or aliens that are coming to prepare us for that battle with the hostile ones, i.e. Yahweh. They're going to basically say Yahweh is basically the Borg.
That's exactly
trying to assimilate everything in the universe, and they're going to say, look, we got to band together and blow this thing out of the sky when it gets close, right? So I've always looked at that. I think, in a lot of research, and Rob, you brought that up a lot, and I think it's very important that people research that, because I say even when it comes to flat Earth, it's not so much why they would lie. Also, what does that prepare us for, the lie, right? Mm. It prepares us for a lot of stuff, i.e. what we're talking about here tonight with the UFO, with contact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, I wish I could just download everything that's in my head, instead of sitting here trying to make videos. Because I came back from that conference, and I think I said to a few people, I have enough material that I could produce videos for the rest of my life, just from this one conference. Because there's so much to comment on, but I feel like the way I'm going to be able to do that most effectively is with something like Seed. Well, not something like actually Seed. Yeah. Is because, look, we do these conferences and, maybe we get a few thousand people to show up. Great. We do some videos. We get a few thousand hits. Great. We're not reaching the world. There's 7 billion people out there, 300 million in the country alone. And when you look at the power of mainstream media and Star Trek in particular, wow, has that TV series, and I just recently binge watched the 7 seasons of The Next Generation, and seeing how they have systematically programmed us to believe all of this stuff, one seed at a time. So
do you have like a GoFundMe? Like, again, let's get into this and just see how people can participate and kind of get involved with Seed. Because I agree with you, like sometimes people will turn down certain things, like when it comes to mainstream media, whether it's Netflix or stuff, but we need these projects, and especially from people that are going to get biblical truth out there in a creative way, such as Seed, right? So to me, it's almost like, what are the steps being taken? I know that you've been doing a lot of stuff, we've talked, but how can people kind of get involved right away? Like, there's talents and skills that you're looking for, but, have you looked at maybe putting together, a certain type of Kickstarter where there's different levels where a person gets into credits, or they could become a producer, or they could, all I'm saying is there's all these different creative ways that I've seen other people do and fund big projects by having multiple tiers and different things. And I just wanted to find out, where are you at in that, as far as getting the general public involved to start really funding it to make things happen.
Yeah, when I first started working on this, I wanted this to happen in 2010. Now I'm so thankful that, in his divine sovereignty and grace and mercy, he didn't allow that to happen. Yeah. I believe Father is opening the doors for that to happen now, though. And that I had to have a lot of things in place, not just the storyline, which is critically important, obviously, but also just having a logistical infrastructure in place to be able to handle it. And I didn't have that until February of this year. I spent the entire month of February and into March completely redoing my website. Before it was HTML based, now it's a content management WordPress site with a lot of modules and things in there that are very functional to help me do something like a crowdfunding campaign and other things, and to get people on the mailing list and whatnot. There's also a so you can go to seedtheseries.com. Let me just start there. If you go to seedtheseries.com, you immediately will see several links, and this is the old site. You see sow and see, but all the links on this landing page now take you into the new site. So it takes you into a section that shows you the different projects that I'm working on, because I have the TV series as the primary project, but there's also video game, comic book, and fiction novel. And I'm working on the graphic novel right now. We're about 1/3 done with it. It's coming along very well. Very happy with that. If you click on the C link, that takes you into a page that describes the project and what I'm trying to do and why I'm doing it and all that kind of stuff. If you click on it says click here to enter the new site, that takes you to the new landing page. And that's where people who are curious that really want to know, we're going to run out of time here. So
we got 4 minutes.
So people can just, anything you want to know basically is on that landing page. I mean, there's like a 27-page PDF that gives you an overview. You can read the first episode for free, audio drama from 2014, lots of stuff that you can see on there. On the crowdfunding side, though, in 2014, when I did that Yahuwah Triangle series, I thought, hey, I've got this new box set of DVDs. It's going to be great. I got a new product I can sell. And I really felt strongly the Holy Spirit said, nope, you're giving it away for free. And everything else you're going to do, you're going to give for free.
Wow.
And at that time I was like, but Father, hey, but he sustained us, and all of my materials online for free. Yeah, you could buy my books and DVDs, but my books and DVDs are based on content you can get for free online. And the thought occurred to me, I was like, Father, did you set that up for me? Because I've put out 500 videos on YouTube. I've got hundreds of interviews on podcasts and radio shows that I've done, thousands of pages of blog content on multiple websites that it's all up there for free. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm just saying, hey guys, I've spent 10 years of my life putting up a ton of information for free. Is that worth $30 to you?
Yeah.
If it is, go. Because it as a way of showing your appreciation for all that work that I did, would you consider $1 a day for 1 month, or just $30? If so, go here. And I made a webpage specifically for that. It's called seedtheseries.com/make it happen.
Nice.
And if you go there, hang on. Sorry. If you go there, has the same landing page basically, but it says click here to find out how you can help make it happen. And then it takes you to a page where people can give. Now I've got 180,000 subscribers on YouTube. If everybody does that, I'm funded. Boom. Nice.
Yeah.
Done. And then I don't even have to, the hard part about perks is that requires me to do other stuff that I have to, I have to create or do something more to make those perks for those people. And I will eventually do something like that, but I'm going to put this out as a test. For 10 years I've given everything I've got. Is that worth $30 to you?
Yeah.
And frankly, if even only 40% of my audience says yes, that still will get us enough to get going. So this is the first time I've ever that show that I did on Parable of the Vineyard last weekend was the first time I ever did an ask. This is only my second time doing it. And for guys like you that have shows and platforms, we have crossover audience. We have a lot of the same audience, but you probably have people on your channel that I don't have, and I have people that you don't have. Is hey, let's link arms. I'll promote you, you promote me. And we can together make this happen, because ultimately all I'm trying to do is taking the same information we're all talking about, but put it in a package that can go to a much larger audience than we've been able to reach, that won't be censored. Because if I do this on my own, as opposed to going to a studio, then it's not going to get censored.
Yeah. Because it seems like the urgency is there. I mean, speaking of urgency, I think it is, because a lot of kind of your research and kind of your flat earth journey, you needed to kind of get to that point to be able to incorporate it into seed. Like, you couldn't have done this in 2015 with seed. You were just like, you're like an zetetic agnostic at that point. You're kind of, so you had to kind of go through all of the things that you went through over the last while in enclosed cosmology. So I do believe that, like, you're now at a point, you're seriously looking at this, putting this all together. So I think it is important to support it, for people to learn more about it. And I think it's extraordinary. I think, with the comic and with the novel and all the things that you're putting together, I think people will start to see exactly how big this project is, but how many pieces are coming together and the reach it has on the world, especially, having it, distributed in that fashion. As far as, like, sci-fi, but it's real. Like, that's the beautiful thing, right? You're bringing that, incorporating those things into it. And that's what people like. I mean, there's no doubt that Hollywood and blockbuster films, I mean, what did the last Avengers do? It's like, 190 billion or something.
Yeah, the potential for outreach is huge.
It
really is. But anyways, it's been awesome having you on, Rob.
Thanks, guys.
You so much. We'll have you on again. It's been amazing. This is episode 26, Celebrate Truth Radio. And we'll see you next Saturday.
Take care, guys.
Take care. Blessings.
freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, in which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Don't miss Celebrate Truth with Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate every Saturday, 7 to 9 Pacific, 10 to midnight Eastern on Revolution Radio. They talk the Bible and how it exposes a lot of lies in the world with special guests, roundtable discussions, and call-ins from you, the listeners. This is not your typical Christian radio show. Celebrate Truth with Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate every Saturday from 7 till 9 p.m. Pacific, 10 midnight Eastern on Revolution Radio.